Welcome to a shell-shocked new episode of the Demonic Compendium, the show where I discuss the mythology, design, and game history of your favorite Megami Tensei demons. With today marking the release of Persona 5 The Phantom X, I wanted to... Wait, didn't we just do this last week? Man, Atlas, you are not even giving me a chance to take things slow and steady, huh? Well, get ready to come out of your shell, because today, I'm talking about Xuanwu. So, normally when I do these release day celebration episodes, I put a lot of thought and care into the demon I choose to try and fit thematically with the game that's coming out. So, why Xuanwu? Well, because Persona 5 The Phantom X is the first official Chinese Megami Tensei game, and Xuanwu is a Chinese figure whose name starts with X, and that is the type of thing that my sleep-deprived brain thinks is funny. Speaking of the name, let's get this out of the way up front. Xuanwu is sometimes known in the franchise as Gui Xian, and is sometimes referred to as Genbu. Well, Genbu is an easy one, that's simply what he's called in Japan rather than China. Gui Xian is sort of an interesting one though. The character Gui refers to turtles, while Xian is a sort of Chinese demigod, usually referring to, priests or heroes that were granted divinity. So while it may not directly refer to the black tortoise, it can roughly translate as turtle god, at least as far as I could tell. While many games in the franchise swap between these three names, for the sake of clarity, I'll be calling him Xuanwu from here on, even if that's not what he's called in the specific game that I'm discussing. By the way, the name Xuanwu actually has very little to do with the tortoise or snake, and roughly translates as black warrior. And speaking of that, look, I thought this was going to be an easy one for me. I thought I could just say, okay, yeah, Xuanwu, he's a member of the Qiling, he's a black tortoise who represents north and water and other stuff, and there's usually a snake wrapped around him. Together they represent things like longevity and hibernation, but honestly there is quite a bit more to it than that. Like many of his compendium entries refer to him as a great warrior, referring to the legend of Xuanwu. One story from the Qing dynasty involved him removing his stomach and intestines to try and wash them in the river to cleanse him of his sins, but he ended up losing them. He was eventually granted immortality, but those organs he lost transformed into a tortoise and a snake and began to hurt people. Then there's also the iconic Journey to the West, where the King Xuanwu of the North had a tortoise and snake general by his side. So while yes, Xuanwu is the black tortoise, often accompanied by a snake, and is one of the 4 symbol beasts of China, there's a lot more to it than that, and I found the interconnected stories and fables of the different dynasties to be really interesting. Xuanwu's compendium entry from Persona 5 Tactica refers to it as one of the Xiuling, celestial creatures of Chinese myth. It represents the direction north, the season of winter, and the element of water. Known to be a great warrior, it supports Earth from below. And hey, if you like what I'm doing on this show, please consider commenting, subscribing, maybe even checking out the Patreon. Trust me, it all does help a lot. Thank you so much. Moving on. Design-wise, I'm just going to say up front that I spent way too much time researching Chinese turtle species to try and see if there was a particular one that matched Xuanwu's design. I don't have a concrete answer for certain, but I'm going to say he might be based on either the painted terrapin or the Chinese striped-necked turtle. Of course, ultimately, the design most of us are familiar with actually stems from an old carving of the black tortoise, which looked like this, so it's a pretty clear inspiration. That said, Xuanwu has had a few other designs in the franchise that are worth mentioning. One of its earliest depictions was a red version of this bizarre human-faced turtle, whose design is more frequently associated with the figure Tan Qi, albeit with a different color scheme. Then there's also his SMT2 design, where he was a particularly long-necked turtle with a snake-like tail without it actually being a snake. And then he also had this weird furry tail that was sticking out as well. I don't know what that's about. Xuanwu even had this kaiju-looking design in the Devil Children series, which, okay, it's neat. And I'll circle things back around to the design most of us know and the game that we're honoring today, Persona 5 The Phantom X. His design in that game is more or less the same, but the art matches the actual pose that we typically see for the 3D model of this figure. As far as game history goes, I briefly touched on this back in my Huanglong video, so I'll just get it out of the way now that Xuanwu and the other 3 animals are frequently the fusion recipe to fuse the Golden Dragon. I'm not going to sit here and go over every single game where that's the case, because that's boring. In Persona 1, players can fuse Xuanwu by picking up the Black Tablet Totem in the Deva Yuga, and returning it at max rank to the Velvet Room awards them with the Genbu armor item. Also in Revelations Persona, they decided the turtle would just be called Genbu, which I find very, very funny. In the Persona 2 duology, Xuanwu can cast several fusion spells along the 4 other symbols, including Celestial Veil, which blocks attacks of the 4 main elements, and Summon Shikigami by casting spells alongside the Summon Spirit ability. In Persona Q, Shadow of the Labyrinth, players can get a Genbu shell by sacrificing the turtle in the Velvet Room, and selling it allows them to buy a unique weapon for Chie known as the Genbu Greaves. Sacrificing Genbu to the electric chair in the original Persona 5 would make a Patra skill card, but in Royal it grants players with the Frost Ring, or Spiral Frost Ring if an alarm is in effect. This next bit probably isn't interesting to anybody except me, but it's a weirdly bizarre instance where Xuanwu is the only one that's not represented, which I think is fascinating in itself. In Yakuza 4, the 4 playable characters each represent one of the Xiuling, with Kiryu representing the Azure Dragon, Akayama representing the Vermilion Bird, Saejima representing the White Tiger, and Tanimura representing the Black Tortoise. Now, you're probably thinking, what does this have to do with MegaTen? Well, in Persona 5, Dancing in Starlight, most of the characters have costumes from the Yakuza or Like a Dragon series, with Ren representing Kiryu, Yusuke having an Akayama outfit, Makoto absolutely rocking that Saejima look, and even Ryuji as, well, Ryuji, to represent Koryu himself. Because none of the cast has a Tanimura outfit, like I said, it's interesting to me that Xuanwu is the only one not represented in this game. Which is a real shame, because let's be honest, Akechi could have totally been Tanimura, and he was severely lacking in costumes in that game as it was. Xuanwu has a small role in Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne, where leveling up a Nozuchi enough will cause it to evolve into the Black Tortoise. Regular viewers of this show may recall a few months ago I talked about how the water spirit, Mizuchi, will evolve into the Azure Dragon. It's interesting that the Earth and Water Zuchi demons in Nocturne both evolve into one of the Chinese symbols, but it's interesting to me because Xuanwu is supposed to be the water element in Chinese lore. Xuanwu appears as an optional boss fight toward the end of Digital Devil Saga, as part of a side quest where Surf and the Embryon hunt down the 4 symbols, who are so powerful they aim to create a brand new tribe. Despite only being one person, both the turtle and snake part of the demon speak, communicate, and even argue with one another as if they're 2 separate beings, which is funny, but, I don't know, a little bit odd? I think it's kinda cool. Well, you're dumb, and no one cares what you think. Rude. Xuanwu appears as a punishing foe in Shin Megami Tensei 5, spawning in the northern area of Dot after accepting the subquest The Golden Dragon's Arrival, where Huang Long tasks players with hunting down and defeating all 4 of the mythical beasts. In the mobile title, Shin Megami Tensei Liberation D2, and I just thought of something. Does anyone find it peculiar that I never just say the name of that game? I always introduce it as the mobile game, or the mobile title. I ask because obviously Persona 5 The Phantom X is also a mobile title, even if it's also on Steam and coming to consoles. Does that bother any of you? Should I stop doing that? Let me know, but for now, in the mobile title, Shin Megami Tensei Liberation D2, Xuanwu has a small role during Seren's unique questline, which is fitting given her love of Chinese culture. While on a date with Newbie, the couple is attacked by a stalker who wields the 4 heavenly beasts, although Long is the actual boss of the encounter. There's also a super powerful Xuanwu in Origate 2, but those of you who watched the Tom Lean video from a few months ago know that I hate Origate 2 and will never go back into that dungeon ever again. But speaking of the Tom Lean video, Xuanwu also has another small role in the main story where the character Hayate actually summons the Black Tortoise as a boss fight in a late Season 1 chapter. And hey, speaking of mobile titles, let's take a look at the game of the day. In Persona 5, The Phantom X, Xuanwu appears as an elite enemy mini-boss inside of Kyuchi's palace. And I think he's also a guild boss battle during the summer event, but I'm not 100% sure if that's actually what's being shown off here. And the very last thing I want to highlight today is something that I find interesting, even if it doesn't really have a story role. Despite the 3D model seen in the Compendium and Sabbath attacks in Soul Hackers 2, dealing super effective damage to add Xuanwu to the stack will have his demonic silhouette actually match the pose and position of his classic artwork, which, yeah, I thought was neat. And so there you have it, Xuanwu, the black-shelled brute basically bundled up by a bountiful boa. Did I leave out something you thought was important? Was I just plain wrong about something? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to let me know who you'd like to see me talk about in future episodes. That's going to do it for this episode of the Demonic Compendium, and I will see you all next time after I play a lot more Persona 5 The Phantom X. But be careful while you rest that a demon doesn't take over your body.